We're addicted to dopamine, aren't we? The world is so dysregulated, distracted, and disconnected from really the body, right? But just to a more regulated, downshifted, and balanced way of living. Now, it's not bad to be go, 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 move, 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 fast, fast, fast. But I would reckon that there's so many consequences on our creativity, our overall vitality, and our capacity to really create deep connection and relationship because of our addiction to just cheap, fast dopamine, right? So if you're creative and you're struggling to be inspired, or maybe you're too stimulated, you have too many ideas and you can't just focus and direct your life in a meaningful way, it's time for a dopamine detox. So in this video, I really want to break down how to downshift out of a dopamine addiction to really, pursue what I call slow dopamine and really help your mind and nervous system rewire to a more focused, vital operating system. So if you're new here, my name's Kev. I'm an award-winning furniture designer and a creative strategist, and I help ambitious creatives design and build a life and business that they love, that feels aligned, that they cultivate from the inside out, from their authenticity, right? And dopamine, especially cheap, fast, junky dopamine, is something that gets in the way between you and the life that you want to live. Because let's face it, you can open up any social media app and you can see 1,000 people doing shit that you want to do, or you're just watching junk food. You want nothing in particular, but it's like you could see all the cool things that people are doing, then you can feel like, well, I'm not doing that, or I gotta do all of that, yet never actually move in that direction, yet never actually feel intimate with your desire. It's time to give your mind and your body a break from just being hopped up on those hormones. So we're going analogic, baby. I want to help you design a 30-day dopamine detox so that you can really experiment with how you feel now compared to how you feel in the process and on the other side of changing the way that you relate to technology, to media, to what really gets you excited, right? Dopamine's an amazing thing. We have it in our system for a reason. But really only in the last 10, 20 years have we been exposed to such just junk food in terms of getting that hormonal sort of stimulation going. So to whatever degree feels comfortable for you, I want you to really think about, where are my relationships to technology numbing, distracting, leaky, all of those things? Where am I looking to distract myself from the reality I currently feel with technology? For most people, that tends to be things like social media. For me, it's Craigslist, YouTube, and even checking email, right? Any gamut of ways that we just are constantly looking for a quick hit. A cool car popped up, or a cool surfboard popped up on Craigslist, or a new video from my favorite person. And I get this is a paradox, I'm making a video on this. But having gone through a couple different dopamine detoxes in the last year or so, I just want to encourage you to do the hard, awkward work that it takes to really rewire the way that your nervous system and your body is relating to the world around you, right? Because we're fidgety, one way to know that you really need a dopamine detox is if you're fidgety. You have too much energy in your system and you don't know how to get it out, so you have to fidget and move and fidget and move. And what the dopamine detox really helps you do is it helps you learn how to circulate and hold greater capacity for energy in your system, right? This can be especially important for being able to express bigger ideas into the world, to stay focused and really do the work that it takes to put them out in the world, to just being able to connect deeper, to have better sex, to all these things that require us to just be more embodied and more deeply here, right? So look to the places where you're distracted, to where you numb yourself with technology, and ask, how can I let 10% of my craving go? Or how can I replace 10% of my craving for technology with something more nourishing? I call the most nourishing activity. So we don't need to go cold turkey. I would absolutely encourage you to do so. 30 days, delete all of your social media things. You know, maybe you can have one say I can watch Netflix at night for an hour, or I can watch a YouTube video because you're here. But we don't need to go cold turkey, but I encourage you if you do, and I'm inspired by that. But rather we can just be, how can I observe where I'm going for that quick hit and become aware of that and realize I can still get that quick hit, right? You could still do it. You can still look at Instagram, look at the Facebook Marketplace, whatever the fuck it is that you like to do, right? And with awareness, then we can start to inject a different response. I call it mindful reactions, creative responses. We want to be mindful to our reactions. Man, when I get home, the first thing I do is I go turn on the TV, or I go to look at social media, or I go to do whatever I need to do to distract myself from just being with me right here and now, Be mindful of those reactions and ask, how can I create a more creative response, And this works extraordinarily well too for things that might be addictions. If you're addicted to using social media, or if you're addicted to coming home and taking a puff of weed, or like drinking a beer or a glass of wine, and again, those things aren't wrong. I don't mean to demonize them. But be mindful of that kind of patterned reaction to grab for something. And what if you can inject your most nourishing activity in there instead? Example, your most nourishing activity can be walk around the neighborhood for 5 minutes. Get your feet on the sand if you live close to the beach. Or just sit and breathe. There's been plenty of times where I'm like, I have all this energy in my system, and it's like I almost just want to dispel it. So I'm like, I'll just, listen to another podcast. I love podcasts, and I'll just like grab my phone and I'll start listening to a podcast, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I don't need this right now, and I'll turn it off and I'll just literally do nothing and breathe for like 10 minutes. And that immediately makes me so much more available for life, right? Makes me so much more open to what I'm feeling, and gets me back in the capacity to create, because I genuinely love creating. I genuinely love making artifacts, having conversations, interacting with clients. I genuinely love writing, sculpting, welding, painting, all of those things, right? So the dopamine detox starts with us recognizing where we default to distracting, to filling a void, right? And creating space instead to sit with and feel what is there that we're avoiding ourselves from feeling. So what you'll find, and you can also bump up, you can start, how can I just be on social media, or how can I seek 10% less detox today? So on your lunch break, instead of going for your phone, what if you just had a conversation with a buddy? What if you went for a walk instead? What if you just closed your eyes, put your hat over your head under a tree, and just like took a little nap or something, I don't know. There's a multitude of ways that you can learn to re-relate to your pattern, and it starts with just 10%. How can I just be 10% more present to what I'm feeling without distracting myself? Because that's really what dopamine's all about. At least in this day and age, right? We're just constantly hopped up and addicted and distracting ourselves. So you can then begin to bump up the amount that you are curious to sort of downshift out of dopamine. So you can start with, how can I just have 10% less need for those quick hits of dopamine and replace them with something more nourishing? Then the next week you might say, okay, maybe I'll cut it in half. Maybe I'll literally put one of those things on your phone. I think they have it to where they like manage screen time for people that are really like addicted to social media and using their phone. I've never done that, so I can't speak to that. But maybe that you go to that length, or maybe you create an accountability system with your buddy that says, hey man, if I'm on Instagram if I go on Instagram in the next, and this is hard, I don't use Instagram, so I'm just trying to imagine what it's like, but it's like, hey man, every time I use Instagram this week, I'm gonna pay you $5, and I want you to hold me accountable. I don't know how they would do that. You'd have to be honest, or maybe there's a way, I don't know. But then you get some skin in the game, right? And then you can start to see how uncomfortable it might be for you to not have that. And that's where you want to be. That's the beauty of a detox. That's the beauty of changing your diet, right? You change your diet so you can observe how much your body has been well adjusted to something that maybe isn't serving you. So it gets worse before it gets better, right? You take out a lot of shit from your diet and you get sick because your body doesn't know what to do without all that shitty food anymore. It takes a while to sort of rewire how your body handles really nourishing, organic, good food, whatever it is, right? Same thing with this cheap dopamine. So to whatever capacity you're available for, and I encourage you to keep stretching that edge throughout this 30 days, right? Of realizing where your reactions are, creating a new pattern response, and then also upping the ante. You know what, this week I did 10% less, I wanna go 50%. I'm only gonna use social media on Mondays and Tuesdays, or whatever the fuck it is, you know? Or I'm just gonna delete it cold turkey and see what happens. And what you'll find is you'll have to get through this kind of first fever, right? The withdrawal to where you're really just looking for a quick hit. You're looking for validation. You're looking for a quick idea. You're looking for something to touch that place and you're not getting it. So you have to sit in the uncomfort of that. But once you break through that, you then are much, much more open and available to really create new relationships to what you crave and what really excites you and inspires you, right? I call this, you can start seeking and pursuing slow dopamine, you know, in the same way that like, you know, I'll speak for myself, like really connecting with a new human, like I think slow is beautiful. You know, we have a tendency just to go all in 0 to 100 with things in life, and there's nothing wrong with that. But what happens when you get to know someone slowly? What happens when you get to just be in the unfolding of curiosity that doesn't need to just be fully understood and explored? You know, in a world where we have information to the nines and back, what happens when I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna read a chapter of the book versus reading the whole fucking thing, you know? Again, it's like creating this kind of, I don't wanna call it like a tease, but creating this more just balanced, slow, pleasurable process of experiencing dopamine, you know? Like maybe it's you don't have any social media interaction during the week, and then on the weekend you like plan to like watch a movie with a friend, but it's like super intentional where you're like, man, like let's get a pizza and let's, you know, have a bottle of wine and like let's watch this thing that I want to watch, or whatever it is, you know. It's like there's such a more deep form of dopamine available, right? You know, and in the same thing of like adrenaline that you seek, you know, instead of whatever forms give you that quick hit, maybe it's more slow and drawn out. Maybe it's like, man, I'm gonna go on like a 3-hour hike and I don't even have to pressure myself to get to the top. Like I'm just gonna enjoy that process. It's these slower pleasures, right? So as we detox out of like this cheap dopamine cycle and addiction, we allow ourselves to invite in much, much more nourishing forms of that sort of hormone, right? We're able to allow in deeper connection. You know, we're able to really have this challenge with the way that we want to express ourselves. What if I get such a deeper form of dopamine from solving a little puzzle, or like really trying to figure out the math behind this project? Like there's something much, much more deep available to how we seek those hormones, and the way that that impacts every area of our life is tremendous, right? It really, really unfolds and unravels in pretty unimaginable ways. If we're used to such fast, get it over with, fast, what happens when we really take the time to delight in everything that we do? What happens when we're fully present with it all? I would reckon that every area of your life starts to expand and deepen in its creativity and intimacy, just in the joy of getting to experience it. So don't get me wrong, there's gonna be plenty of times where you're tested, where you're just gonna want the quick hit. And you know what, it's okay, sometimes maybe give yourself that quick hit, but just be mindful of that reaction, and you can practice replacing that reaction with a more creative response. Instead of defaulting to just going on social media, call a friend. Instead of defaulting to, I don't know, eating junk food, whatever it is, go for a walk. You know, it's just mindful reaction, creative response, and it's so much more available than we think. So through this process of doing like a 30-day detox where you really downshift out of this kind of junk food for your hormonal system, right? We're able to open up new creative channels. We're able to be inspired, and we're able to be inspiration for other people, because you're just gonna be so much more magnetic. Like, how much more present are you if you leave your phone in the car? You know, it's something like I really live by, is like, especially if I'm spending time with someone, phone's in the car. I'm not taking that on the walk. I'm not taking that while we're sitting down and really dropping in. Certainly not gonna bring that when I'm like supporting a friend that's like really has to express something. Like, we allow depth to emerge, which creates the conditions for creativity, inspiration, intimacy, all the things that make us expand as a creative, as a business owner, as a man, a woman, a lover, whatever it is, right? So I encourage you to really get real with yourself about how much you are seeking those forms of cheap dopamine, and creating a detox that feels good to you for 30 days, and tracking who you are now, how you feel during the process, and who you are on the other end. And by all means, on the other end, if like, you know what, I like my life more, I'm gonna go back to using all these things, great. But what if you said, you know what, at the end, I'm gonna delete all of this stuff for 30 days, and I'm just gonna be present with the world. And at the end of these 30 days, I'm gonna decide which life I like more and how I can integrate bits and pieces of both, right? That's probably gonna lead to a pretty inspiring life, right? Probably gonna make you really magnetic too. So for what it's worth, design your dopamine detox, 30 days, see what happens. And if you'd like deeper support, if you'd like just more insight and wisdom and practices and experiments that you can run to have tangible, real effects on your life and business, sign up for my newsletter. That's the best place to get all the free goods and all of the juicy workshops and courses that I have in store for you. So thank you all for joining. Appreciate y'all. Have a good one. Ciao.